welcome to Android Dialogues, where we have bite-sized conversations with people in the Android community. I'm Huyen and I'm speaking with
Dan Hill.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Dan.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're currently in Mountain View, California. Google I/O is this week, so I managed to grab Dan on a Sunday, no less, to have a little chat with him. Dan, where are you based and how did you get started in Android?
Yeah, I'm actually based in the Bay Area, so I work for Robinhood. I got started back in college, so I was a person who in college didn't really have a strong idea of what I wanted to do after college. I was in CS, so knew I wanted to be a developer, obviously, but hadn't quite found my niche.
Yep.
And that's when the G1 came out. So I got the phone, was super excited, and started writing apps for it, and just kind of took off from there.
Nice. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Robinhood. And Robinhood, I think, has won quite a few awards, hasn't it, for material design?
Yeah. We won a Google Play Award for material design, I think 2 years ago now. Yeah.
So, Dan, what we wanted to talk about today is something that you've been kind of experimenting with a little bit.
Yeah.
And what is that?
Yeah, I'm playing around with the concept of unidirectional data flow in kind of our app architecture. So maybe about a month ago, we started playing with the MVP architecture. We didn't have a very strong view kind of architecture setup. We had pretty strict separation between the data layer and everything else, but we didn't really have a strong architecture between the view and kind of the business logic. Kind of by the nature of using RxJava and Kotlin and things being so easy to just fire off network requests, a lot of our fragments and activities and views kind of got littered with kind of de facto business logic, I would say.
Yeah.
So this was kind of an effort to come up with a new, this is the way that we're going to write screens moving forward. And we started with Model View Presenter, MVP. And then actually Sam Thompson, who joined the team maybe about a month ago, suggested that we look into UDF as well on top of kind of this pattern.
UDF is, I've heard some people talk about it. Can you explain what Unidirectional Data Flow is?
Yeah, so unidirectional data flow is exactly what it sounds like. It's data just kind of flowing in one direction. You can kind of visualize it either as a line or commonly as a circle. So if you think about it in terms of MVP, you've got your model and you have your view and your presenter. And normally you have interfaces between these two so that you can unit test each side of it a little more easily.
Right.
And those interfaces will normally be kind of thick, right? They'll have multiple methods. So your control flow is kind of ping-ponging back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think of UDF, unidirectional data flow, as kind of condensing those interfaces both to a single method. So the presenter will be dispatch action. So the view can call dispatch action with any kind of action type that it wants to take in business logic world.
Okay, gotcha.
And then at the same time, the presenter is kind of doing some work distilling a new canonical view state. And then it's passing that view state to the view. So the view interface becomes just set view state with the view.
Oh, that's really awesome. So it kind of condenses everything, all the different aspects of what your view might look like and how the presenter controls them into actions and states?
Yeah,
really
exactly.
Neat.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool because it makes you think really hard about exactly the data that you're interested in observing on this view. And then you kind of have one nice neat function where you're kind of manipulating everything, so it makes things very, I would say, easily trackable.
So does that kind of not force you, but kind of, are expected to kind of enumerate all the different kind of cases and states that your app can take before actually kind of diving in and really kind of creating the flow?
Yeah, a little bit. So if you think about a network request in flight, the presenter in traditional model view presenter might be calling set what's it called? Set progress bar visible, and then set it back to invisible.
Right.
But in kind of UDF land, it would actually just be calling set state with the flag show progress bar as true or false. So it kind of, it distills everything into a nice, neat little package, which has some cool benefits, especially in Android where you need to for your view, you need to persist that across orientation changes. So now you have this nice little view state.
Perfect.
In Kotlin land, you can make it parcelable. And you can just handle orientation changes automatically.
Say I have a search bar or an edit text, say, that's a query entry, right? And I have a button where if I push the button, it sends a query off to a server. Okay, can you kind of walk me through what I would need to do that in UDF?
Yeah. This is actually exactly the screen that we're doing this in Robinhood.
Ooh, nice.
So this is perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, so you're going to like let the user type out the query, and let's say that we have a button that they have to hit to like actually send the query to the network. So kind of in UDF land, when they hit that button, the view itself is going to grab the text from the search box, and it's going to put it in like a do search action.
Okay.
It's going to send that do search action over to the presenter. The presenter is then going to kind of start the search to the network, and then it's going to submit a view state back to the view that says, I've started this search result. Okay. But it doesn't say that explicitly. It says like, show the progress bar now, and the search results are currently empty. So your view doesn't really understand that there's a search happening or anything else. It just understands like, oh, I've been told to hide this progress bar. I've been told to show an empty list in my like recycler view adapter. So it kind of just stuffs the stuff down in there. And then in the meantime, when your retrofit observable kind of comes back with the network result or with an error, you have view states for those as well. So you're kind of just like manipulating your view state in the presenter. And this kind of like machinery in the presenter can be as complicated or simple as kind of you want it. And it's kind of like a black box to the view. And then the presenter just kind of hands the view state back to the view. And in the case of success, it just takes the search results off the wire, puts them in the view state, and then hands it back over. And then the view knows what to do with that, and it puts the list into the recycler view adapter, and then it hides the progress bar.
Okay, so actions are always kind of moving forward, right? So from the view to
view to presenter,
yep. And then the presenter just has all the wiring that it has the state, and then the view is just like looking for the state and like kind of knowing how to react to it or how to display the different like aspects to it. I really like that a lot. I think the hard part would be I know I'm thinking of like my apps as well. Just like, oh my gosh, like trying to enumerate all the actions and figuring out like all the different states that my app could be in. Like, do you have any what was the hardest part of kind of adapting UDF to your app?
So I would say the hardest part so far has been we've gone from like really lean, like no real architecture. It's kind of just like, whatever goes.
Yeah.
To kind of having this more strict architecture, and we're still pretty early on with it. So a lot of our patterns are still like kind of shaking out, but we are seeing that there's like a lot of classes that we're kind of creating. So like you have to create an action for everything you want to do. We're actually using a flavor of UDF that has an intermediate set of states called results.
Oh, interesting.
So you need like to enumerate for every action what are the possible result states that you can get into, and those are all encapsulated into the presenter. And then there's what's called a reducer, so it takes the results as a stream of all the results that can be falling through this machinery, and it takes the previously known state and the new result, and it kind of knows how to combine these two into the new canonical view state to pass off to the view.
Interesting.
So that like kind of there's a bit of a class explosion there, but I think it's well worthwhile because you get kind of strict separation of concerns, and you get very easy unit testability. I don't think that's something that I've touched upon.
Yeah.
So your reducer functions are actually supposed to be and should be functionally pure. So they're completely JVM unit testable, which is great. Your actions and like the piece that I was talking about in the Robinhood machinery, which is like action to result, it's kind of async, so it's like hitting network or database or whatever. So it's a little more surface area, I guess, to mock out for the unit tests, but it's still like pretty isolated, and you can pass in exactly the external dependencies that you need, and you're really, again, it's like an input-output system, so you can test for every single input that I know about that I can give this thing, like what are the possible outputs and which ones do I expect given the current state. So you can actually set it up really nicely, even with like parameterized unit tests, where you have like just this huge like table of like these are the inputs I expect, or these are the inputs that I want, and these are the outputs that I expect given these inputs.
That's really cool, and it feels like a side effect also of having to enumerate like all the states and kind of like all the actions that you take. That it does like you do kind of just not a laundry list, but you kind of are you know very specifically like what you should be testing to some degree.
Yeah, it forces you to think really hard about like, oh, if I just got this weird error state and then I get like this other thing, like what is my resultant canonical view state to pass back to the view, the compiler forces you to deal with this because
true.
you're using like Kotlin's when statements to
Yeah.
like handle all of these like sealed class
Yeah, field
cases.
classes. That's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely. So it's like you are actually like kind of forced to deal with all of these edge cases, which is a really cool like side effect.
I really like that because it's kind of it's kind of easy sometimes to kind of just. I mean, I guess depending on like when you have a lot of states, a lot of actions going on, it could be easy just to leave something out until
Yes.
QA is like, hey, this thing is not working right.
Right.
But you're using the language mechanism to check yourself. I like that a lot. Is there any other like tips you'd give folks for like, I guess, getting started with UDF, or is there anything that you just have discovered that either is surprising or you just think is totally like a seller for y'all for like using UDF?
One thing that like really caught my ear, I guess, when I heard about UDF was like it actually easily enables time travel in your app, which is interesting. So you can kind of imagine like instead of just kind of passing the state to the view and like shoving those down into your Android components and ignoring it. What if you stored the last like 1,000 states in like an in-memory list? Then you could imagine like a debug drawer with a scrubber, and now you can like scrub backward and like reset all these other states. You can like kind of rewind the state of your view. And this has more practical applications than just kind of being showy and doing this for fun. This actually lets you like kind of debug crashes pretty easily. So like we're early enough on that we haven't actually seen a crash on this screen yet. So fingers crossed. But in theory, like you can log every action that comes into the system. You can log every view state that comes out of the system. And so like if you get a bug or you get a crash, you can kind of look through the logs and see where the view state went wrong.
Right.
And then you can see like the action that triggered that and the view state before that. And then you can kind of go to, whatever component caused that. And you can pretty easily find the bug because you have like all these nice little buckets for each individual case. So,
right.
Normally it's just like some assumption that you made that you were a little bit wrong about. So
yeah. I really like that kind of the idea of instant replay because that is kind of one of the hardest parts, like figuring out where a bug is.
Absolutely.
And if you can just like figure out exactly the state that it's in, obviously help you fix the bug. That's really cool. Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely.
UDF sounds even more amazing than I thought it was, and I'm going to have to definitely try it. If people wanted to find you on the internet, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, DanH32.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Oh, I was so happy to have you, and thank y'all, and we'll see you next time. Bye. I just say I'm a huge fan of Robinhood, and I guess I'll tell a little story. Like last year at Google I/O, Dan was giving out some amazing Robinhood stickers, and I think you had like one like Robinhood pin left, and I think there was 3 of us. No, you had 2 pins, and there was 3 of us. And I was like, I have an account. I trade. One of them is mine. I did. Dan, I think I just like kind of terrorized Dan into giving me the pin, but I'm a really big fan.
Thank you very much.
And Robinhood.